Layer masks are a part of most photo editing programs, and Affinity Photo and even Affinity Designer are no exceptions. Now, layer masks also seem to be one of the things that trip up many beginners to photo editing. I have previously made a video about this, and I will add a link to that video in the description for this video. But I thought I would try and make an easier, slightly easier hopefully, to follow and understand video, and I have also made a written tutorial as well, and I will add a link to the download for the written tutorial again in the description for this video. So what is a layer mask? Well, a layer mask is a layer that is basically a solid colour, and that solid colour will either be white or black. Although it is a solid colour, you cannot actually see it, it's not visible. This, I'm guessing, is some way down to its blending attributes. But what these layers do is allow all things to be either visible or to be hidden. Now, the white layer mask will allow an area or an effect or an adjustment to be visible, and a black layer mask will hide an area, an effect or an adjustment from view. Any part of a layer mask that is a shade of grey will either show or hide that area, effect or adjustment depending on how light or dark the grey is, and it will alter the effect of the layer mask and how well it shows or hides that part of the layer mask that is whatever shade of grey. Now, to show how to add and use layer masks, I have set up this image here, which I have renamed white mask, and I've done the same with the same copy of this image, and I've called this one black mask, so I can flip between the two and show you the difference between a white layer mask and a black layer mask. I have also added a solid red layer below the image, which at some point you will see why that is there. So first of all, let's look at how you can add a layer mask to the image. Now, the default color is white. Now, you can do this in two ways. You can come up to the layer menu and you have the option new layer mask. You just click on that and it will add, as you can see here, a white layer mask. It has grouped it together with the image or the layer that was highlighted when you use that option. Now I'm just going to press Ctrl and Z to get rid of that. The other way to add a layer mask is this icon down here that looks like the Japanese flag. If you just click on that, that will do the same thing and add the white layer mask. Now, because it is a white layer mask, everything that is underneath that mask is visible. So it has made absolutely no effect on this image. So let me come back to the other one, where we're going to add the black layer mask. There are two ways to do this as well. You can come up to layer and then you come to new empty mask layer. Click on that and you can see it has added a black solid layer mask, and because black will hide everything that is on the layer that is attached to, you can now see the red layer that is below it. So if I press Ctrl and Z again, the other way to add a black layer mask is again with this Japanese flag icon, but this time you need to hold down the Alt key on a PC, and I believe it's an Option key on a Mac. So if you hold that down and then click on the icon, it will add the black layer mask to that layer. So let me just press Ctrl and Z again, and I'll go back to the white layer. So as you can see, the difference between the white layer mask is the white will let everything below it to be visible, and the black layer mask will hide everything below it. So why would anybody want a layer mask? Well, the way that these are used is, again, like, as I've said before, to either make things visible or hidden. So what you need to do is you select the paintbrush tool and you make black your foreground colour, because we are painting onto the white layer mask, and you do have to make sure that it is the mask only that is highlighted, not the layer, just the mask. And as you can see, if I paint on this now, it will show the red layer that I've put at the bottom. So if I paint over this, you can see the red layer below, and if I hide the red layer, as you can see, I've actually deleted that. So unlike the erase tool, I can bring this back just by changing to the white colour for the brush, and if I paint white back onto this, I can bring back the areas that I may have done by mistake. Okay, so if we then come to the black layer mask, which I will put back on because I did delete it earlier, so let me just put the black layer mask on. Come to the brush tool, make sure that is white paint colour that we have on the brush, because we're going on to the the black layer mask, sorry. And let me just increase the size of this. I can then just paint white onto that layer mask, and you can see the area that the mask is hiding. So that is basically the simple way of how you use the layer mask, be it the white or the black one. As we've just seen, you can use the paintbrush tool to make alterations to a layer mask, but you can also make layer masks from selection tools. Probably the main ones you're most likely to use are the rectangular, elliptical marquee tool, and possibly the freehand selection tool, where you could just draw an unusual shape. But I'm going to use the elliptical marquee tool. And I'll just position it about there, and then if I click on the layer mask icon, it will make a layer mask where the inside the selected area will remain white on the layer mask, so everything is visible, and everything outside the selected area will be black on the layer mask, so it will be hidden. Now, because there was a feathering of 400 pixels, you can just see that there is this area between the edge of the selection is just slightly fading out, because that is where that would be grey on the layer mask, so you can just slightly see through it. If I turn off the bottom red layer, as you can see, let me just press Ctrl and D to get rid of the selection. There you have the layer mask in action. If I turn off the layer mask, you can see the image is still there, unaffected. And turn that back on, and the layer mask is there. Now you can't really do that with a black layer mask, but if I make a selection, a similar selection like that, and I hold down the Alt key and click on the layer mask icon, it just puts a solid black layer mask. It just sort of disregards the selection area. Let me just press Ctrl and Z to get rid of that. So what you would have to do is you would have to, once you've made your selection, come up to the select and then invert pixel selection and then add a default white layer mask. So as you can see, let me press Ctrl and D to get rid of selection. It is now the outside, that is the white area of the layer mask, and it was inside the circle, that is the black area now on the layer mask, so not visible. So it is slightly confusing there where you can and can't use the black layer mask, but you can invert the selection and still get around that problem. Now, I'm not 100% certain why you would want to do this, but you can view the layer mask itself. If you come to the icon for the mask and hold down the Alt key and click on the icon, you can then view what the actual layer mask looks like. So as you can see, the white area, which is allowing the picture to come through, is this circle here, and the black area is hiding everything else. So to get back to looking at your image, you just click back on the layer and everything will go back to normal. But like I said, I'm not 100% certain why you'd want to do that. I mean, I know that once you are viewing it, you can get the paint tool and paint either black or white on it, but you won't really be seeing the effects because all you can see is the layer mask. So I'm a bit baffled as to why that option is there, but that option is there. Now let me just delete this off a minute, and I will make the selection again. Now once you've made your selection, rather than just go straight to making the layer mask, up the top here you can see there is another representation of what looks like the Japanese flag, and it's called the quick mask. And if you click on that, it will show you what the masking effect will have on your image, but it hasn't actually added a mask yet. And you can either look at it in overlay, which is this red background, or you can look at it in black, we can look at it in white, or you can look at it as a transparent, so you get an idea of how that will look before you actually add the mask itself. Let me go back to the overlay mode. While it is in this mode, you can get the paintbrush, and you can, as you can see, hopefully you can see here, that as I run the brush over this area here, it is making visible extra to the selection that was made by the elliptical tool. So if I click and paint down here and down there, when I come to the layer, as you can see, that selection has now altered from the elliptical to which I started out to the extra bit I painted on. So if I now click on the add mask, it has now included that extra bit that I painted on. Press Ctrl and D to get rid of the selection area. So that is how you can use the quick mask options. As you saw earlier, the layer mask option is non-destructive in the sense of if you don't want this mask anymore, you can just turn it off and sort of there's no harm, no foul. Whereas if you'd use like the eraser tool, for example, and you then had added 5 or 6 more layers, it would have been almost impossible without a lot of aggravation to go back and try and get the areas that you deleted. But at least with a layer mask, you've got the option of just turning it off or turning it on, and sort of you are working non-destructively, which is why it's a good idea to use masks wherever possible for this sort of work. Now, when you make the mask, it will automatically by default be attached to the whatever layer that is highlighted at that particular time. You can take the mask away from that layer. You can just click on the icon. Let me just click on the icon and drag it up and out of the group. So that would now be affecting even the red layer that is below, because it is masking that layer as well as the image layer rather than just the image layer. Let me just put this back where it was. You can also do this by right clicking on the layer and coming to release, and it will just release it from that layer and move it to the top. Let me bring this back down again. I believe there's also the option in the layer menu. I'm sure I saw it in here. No. I'm sure it's somewhere else in there, but I can't remember where it is now. But it's just as easy to right click and just click on release. Now, in sort of a reverse of that, if let me just release this again. If you do have a layer mask as on its a layer on its own, and you want it to be grouped with the layer below it, you could just click and drag it down, or you can right click on it and come to mask to below, and it will move that down and group it with that particular layer. Now, as you can see, you can move the layer masks up and down and out of groups and what have you. So if you wanted to add this to another, let me click and move this up and out, and I will duplicate this layer. So I could have moved this layer mask to any particular layer that I wanted it grouped with. And if you wanted to have the same layer mask on more than one layer, what you'd have to do is to duplicate the layer mask and then click and drag the new layer mask into the other layer that you want it on. So if you do need an exact copy of the layer mask on various different layers, you can do it by, like I said, duplicating it and then dragging it down or up into other layers. Right, okay, I've brought this back to just having the image layer here, and I'm going to remake the selection. Click on the add layer mask, and while that area is still selected, I'm going to come to the icon of the mask, and you do really need to be on the icon, and right click, and then you can come down to refine mask, and this will give you the same options you get when you refine a selection. Now, for my money, this is not very subtle, because as you can see, I mean, it has already lost that circle that I had. It's become very jagged and not very good. But much like using the quick mask, you can view it in various colors. And then you can alter some of the settings. Now I've yet to really find a good way to get this to work in a way that I think is any good, but you might get a result you're looking for by using this. And then once you click apply, it will have refined from my original selection, which personally I think is quite horrible. So I will delete that. But that option is there if you want it. Now sort of come near the end of looking at layer masks, and I just want to come to looking at adjustment layers. Now the adjustment layers you can be accessed from this icon, which is the half black and white circle, and you have all these different adjustments. Now pretty much all of them come with an inbuilt layer mask on them. So if I pick HSL for example, and I'll just shut that down, I won't make any alterations, but as you can see it has a layer mask already attached, a white one, so you can paint black onto that layer mask to change any settings that you've made. This being the HSL, I could have bumped up the saturation and made the colours very garish, but then painted black on the areas that I didn't want to be seen in such a garish method. Now probably the best adjustment to show this is the black and white adjustment. So let me just shut this down. So obviously that image is now black and white. So if I come to the paintbrush tool and make sure black is the colour, because we are on a white layer mask, and then hopefully you can see that if I paint black onto that layer mask, it is now allowing the colour from the layer below to show through. So that is the black and white is probably the easiest one that demonstrates how the layer mask works on an adjustment. And like I said, nearly as far as I know, all the adjustments come with an inbuilt layer mask on them. Right, and so similarly, because let me just delete that off a second. There we go. If I put the black and white adjustment back on, if I invert this layer, come to invert or control and I, it will make that a black layer mask on there and not a white one. So that black layer mask is now hiding the black and white effect from that adjustment, so all the colour is visible. So now with the paintbrush tool, and if I get white as the colour that I'm painting with, because this is the black layer mask, I can make certain areas black and white and leave the rest of it colour. So it's just a reversal of what I did earlier. And let's make the trousers black and white. So as you can see, you can reverse the layer mask on the adjustment as easily as you can on a normal layer mask. So basically that is the end of the tutorial. Hopefully it is not too bitty, and hopefully it is explained in a way that's easy to understand for beginners. Like I said, there is a written tutorial which you may find easier to follow, and the download address for that will be in the description for this video on YouTube. So thank you for watching, and goodbye. I just realised that I forgot to mention something and that is using vector objects. Now vector objects can either be shapes like circles, squares and what have you, or text. So you can make layer masks from a vector object. So if I come to, say, the elliptical tool and I draw a circle, if I right click on that and I come to mask to below, it will make a mask from that vector shape. So you can like get the perfect circle, or you could have refined it possibly in some way. So let me just Control and Z to undo that and delete that. And like I said, you can do this with text as well. So you could make some text and then right click on and merge to below. Let me just come off of that so you can see that. So you can come to the move tool, you can move this around and sort of get a different part of the image below to show through on the mask. So that is one thing I forgot to mention, and so this is now me saying goodbye. Thank you for watching.